how much can musicians make financially.
Right.
And I must say it's quite lit. Have there been any trends you see in the students across the years that you have been at NAFA? Like, is the standards of music, let's say, like getting better or like... Okay, welcome back to another episode of Starving Artists of Singapore, the show where we find out more about what it's like being in the arts industry here in sunny Singapore. We've been talking a lot with musicians and practitioners of like arts in the arts industry, but today we're gonna do something a bit different. We're actually gonna interview someone who's not only a performer and composer, but also works as an admin.
As an administrator.
Administrator, yes, and also teach. So basically, our guest today is quite well-rounded. He does admin, he teaches, he performs, he composes. And allow me to introduce to you Lu Heng.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on to this show.
Yep.
So, just a bit of a background. I first met Lu Heng, I think, in 2015. 2015,
yes.
2016.
Time flies, yes.
Oh my God. When I first met Lu Heng, he was at Tikapela. We got him to play keyboard with us for gigs. And funnily enough, currently I play jazz saxophone, right? But before, like back in 2015, jazz to me was like weird noises and people not following score lah. That was the impression I had all the way back then lah. Please don't hold it against me now.
Right.
Yeah, but actually thinking about it, it's Lu Heng who made me like become more interested in jazz music.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because when he first joined us, he played keyboard, right? Then he played a lot of like...
I play a lot of wrong notes.
No.
I don't really follow score. Yeah, so exactly like what Lin Hong mentioned.
Yeah, because he's a composer, right? So he's very good at coming up with like nice voicings and stuff on the fly lah. So I was quite amazed by that. Then that gave me the impression that actually jazz is quite epic.
Okay.
So that's how I next time went on to Google jazz music, learn while I study, and currently I am in the jazz links. But yeah, so that's where I actually first met Lu Heng. And back then you were already working as a admin at NAFA.
Yeah, I started working at NAFA July 2014.
2014.
Yeah, so it's
quite recent actually.
So it's almost 10 years. Yeah, quite recent. Yes.
Okay. I see. So maybe you can give us a bit of a background, like your journey thus far, and just like give the audience a brief introduction of yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi. So I've been an administrator at NAFA for the past almost 10 years now. But my musical journey really started when I was about 15, 16. And that was the point where I decided that I wanted to do music full time. And from that age, I think many of our parents here in very pragmatic Singapore would be slightly concerned, to say the least, because they would think that the arts or whichever sort of aspects of the arts may not be able to sustain as much of a living here, either because the market is very small or the scene is not as developed, or they don't really have a kind of concept as to what artists can do upon graduation. So I think there were some concerns back then, but at that age, I think I kind of decided I wanted to do this on a more sort of full time. I wanted to pursue music professionally, and in some ways I've never looked back. I mean, one might feel like, I could possibly think of, or what if I had went on to pursue a more sort of conventional career path, moving on to a JC and going into uni, what kind of options that would look like. But I've never quite really found any other alternatives, even up to today, because I think this is something that I've really wanted to do since I was young. And even though I may not be as actively involved as a practitioner nowadays, because of the nature of my administrative work, I still find joy in being able to participate in some of these activities on the side, and actually to also support some of my juniors at NAFA. Yeah. So after secondary school, I enrolled in NAFA under the Diploma in Music program, and spent 3 years in NAFA majoring in composition. After that, I went to fulfill my national service commitments, and then I took a year to work before I enrolled in the Bachelor of Music, jointly offered by NAFA as well as the Royal College of Music in London. So I graduated in July 2014, and that was about the same time where my predecessor left his administrative position. And I remember quite fondly in April of 2014, when I was still preparing my portfolio for my submissions, I got a call from my current boss, who is now the Dean of the Faculty of Performing Arts. So he called me and asked me, "Hey, Lu Heng, do you want to consider working at NAFA?" So back then I was still preparing for my portfolio, and I was surprised. But I told him that I would need to finish my submissions first, right? But in some ways, that has been quite serendipitous in the sense that things kind of fell into place, and whatever the sort of job required me to do, I was sort of sufficiently prepared for it to some extent. So I've been working at NAFA ever since. Yeah.
So you mentioned secondary school. Which secondary school were you from?
So I was from Hwa Chong Institution.
Oh.
I was the last batch of the O-level sort of students before they moved on to the sort of integrated program, the True Train program as we call it. And because it was the Dragon year, in order for you to qualify for the sort of higher tiered junior colleges, I remember your aggregate score, your L1R5 as they call it, had to be something like 6 points. And then you deduct 2 points for CCA, 2 points for higher Chinese, 2 points for affiliation, and then you get 0 points, and that is the most perfect and most surefire way that you can get into the JC, Hwa Chong JC. And I was nowhere near that, so but it didn't matter because as I mentioned, I already made up my mind to not pursue that particular pathway, which is what people usually do, the JC and the uni and all that sort of things. Yeah, so that was that.
So coming from Hwa Chong, right? I mean, getting into Hwa Chong itself is not easy. Like top what % of people can get in, right? So at the same time, people have the impression that, people who do music or any non-conventional career path, that is not like, lawyer, doctor, engineer. People usually say oh, people like that don't really have strong academic inclinations. So was that the case for you? Like, are you good at studying or?
I like to joke with my people who know me that I am the chicken, right, in the chicken farm, right, and then of course they will feed the chicken steroids, right, in the form of tuition, in the form of supplementary classes and all that sort of things. So even if I was a chicken in that chicken farm, even with the steroids and all that, I'm not a very fat chicken lah. So even though I was in a place where academically everyone was very strong, I wasn't particularly outstanding, I feel. I knew my sort of strengths and weaknesses in terms of what I was able to do, but in terms of maybe understanding some of the concepts, looking back, I think I knew there was a certain limit, or there was a certain sort of point where most people, at least in the same environment, would have understood it a little easier than I have. And I think that was, that was an undeniable part of the reason why I gravitated towards music, because I felt if I could be good at something, then it would have to be something along those lines rather than your typical sort of math, physics, chemistry, that sort of thing.
So, seeing your experience working at NAFA and interacting with all these students on such a close level, right? And of course, being an administrator, you get to observe these students. have there been any trends you see in the students across the years that you have been at NAFA? Like, is the standards of music, let's say, like getting better, or like any significant trends you observe that you think is interesting?
I would think that students nowadays are a bit more aware of the different possibilities, and I think the mindset of students, but also parents and also the general public, has been evolving. So one particular area is that it may not be as, for the lack of a better word, sinful for a full-time music graduate or someone who has gone through, professional studies in music, to do other things that are not related to music, whether as a full-time or a part-time sort of position. I think there's a lot of pressure or expectation that maybe artists put onto themselves as to what gives them what gives them a certain standard, or what they can offer as an artist to the greater community, to society, based on what they are doing at that point in time. And if it is maybe not so much in alignment with what they have done professionally, or what they have picked up professionally as a student, then it may be sort of frowned upon. And I think that the pathways for artists are only going to expand over the next couple of years. The fact is that with, say, the establishment of the new University of the Arts Singapore, which is a partnership or alliance between NAFA and LaSalle, the two arts colleges in Singapore, to form the new University of the Arts and to thereby elevate the arts into a position where people would recognize it as a viable profession. This can only mean that there will be more opportunities for artists. There will be not just an elevation in terms of the standards of what artists can do and are expected to do, but also the kind of collaborations that artists and non-artists professionally can craft in order to, in short, make the world a better place. Yeah.
So you mentioned about the whole UAS setting up, taking a more pragmatic approach. And I would assume that's to focus on the big question, which is how much can musicians make financially, right? Because in Singapore, everything is about money, unfortunately or fortunately.
Yeah.
So do you mind sharing with our audience, like, what is your salary like from NAFA alone?
I think I derive most of my salary through NAFA, and I have to acknowledge that because I've been working for a number of years now, that has been quite central to my sustenance at the moment, and that actually enables me to then do other things on the side that is related to what I have been training for, without too much sort of financial pressures on whether that would be sustainable or viable. I say that also with a pinch of salt, because I also understand that many artists do this as their primary source of living. So I do not also want to be in a situation where I'm sort of undercutting artists. Quite contrary to that, I think it's important to respect the kind of work that artists put in terms of preparation, in terms of delivering what they need to do for their particular performance or gig. And it's important to sort of peg whatever rates that you're doing to the market rate. But of course, as I mentioned, since that's not a major part of my income, I then have a bit more liberty, and I recognize that as a privilege that I have, and that of course gives me more freedom to manage my time and to manage what I like to do, what I want to do versus what I have to do, and I think every artist presumably will work towards that sort of direction. Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, like, can you give us a number?
I can't really give a number. Yeah. But I can share that there has been some consistency in terms of salary benchmarking. So in terms of our
competitive.
So in terms of the salaries that are offered to both academic and non-academic staff at NAFA, and I'm sure LaSalle and UAS as a whole, I think these are benchmarked quite competitive. These are benchmarked quite competitively across the market.
So looking at what you have described so far, right, I think there are some similarities between you and I in a sense that we don't rely on one thing, either the arts or something else, for daily like sustenance lah. Because myself, I'm currently in NUS studying like business analytics, and I'm doing music on the side. For you, you are admin, which gives you like a fixed salary.
Yes.
At the same time, you have your own composition and creative endeavors.
Yes.
So would you say that this duality in your identity is important in helping both fields become better because you are not overstressed about relying on either one? Like, would you say it has helped you, and would you like encourage your students or Singaporeans out there to like adopt more than one thing in life?
I think the common sort of understanding amongst artists out there is, if they have a day job, then of course they devote sufficient resources and time into that, and then that provides the sort of financial sustenance, right? But when they undertake a labor of love, whether it's a performance, be it paid, semi-paid, unpaid, then that provides an emotional sustenance or fulfillment, or it provides a greater sense of purpose. And I think there has been a lot written and said about finding your own purpose. It can be tied to like Ikigai, for example, right? What you do best, what the world needs, etc. So there's this sort of intersecting, overlapping area in which you'll be able to do what you do best.
Yes.
But more often than not, if we were to think about it realistically, we may not be able to find a job that we absolutely love. I think it will be very all or nothing sort of mentality if we were to just go for something that we really love and we were to not think about the other challenges that come along, because there will always be challenges in whatever we do. So instead of finding one singular job that you absolutely love and not do anything else, perhaps one way to think about it would be to find something that you don't hate. If we frame it that way, and if we can see why we're doing it, and how it can be then supported with other things on the side, then I think it's a more healthy way of moving forward, of not having too much sort of unrealistic expectations about what we do as artists. And to begin with, I think it's very important for artists nowadays to be more versatile. And of course, that's easier said than done because if you are a performer or teacher, or you're a bit of both, apart from being very well at your craft, either performing or teaching, you also have to know how to market yourself. You also have to know how to network. You also have to know how to market yourself to new clients, parents, engage the community. So it's about putting together these different sort of skill sets, even if you may not be so innately keen on or good at, say, putting yourself out there in terms of your social media or your promotion, self-promotions, it's still important to maintain a presence because you never know when the opportunities will come knocking.
Actually, this would bring us to a nice segue to today's sponsor.
Yep.
So for this episode, sponsoring us is we have One Good card from One Good team. So allow me to just segue into like a sponsor segment lah. So basically, One Good card is a smart name card that's sustainable. It's a one-time. It's one card they don't give out. It's a smart name card where you just tap on like an NFC enabled phone, and your profile can show up, and it's good for networking events and stuff. So One Good team currently serves about 120,000 users worldwide, over 2,000 companies as well. They also provide CRM and HRM capabilities to companies lah, so that the entire staff, your entire team can have this centralized system where they can market themselves to other potential clients or existing clients effectively. So everyone's streamlined lah. So hopefully NAFA, I don't know, might adopt this.
Yeah, good for the environment.
Yeah.
Sustainability.
You don't have to save. It's like a hip new thing lor. So it's good for those kind of like tech related networking sessions. Like you show up with a smart name card that looks like this.
But it can also be used for the arts, I'm pretty sure. I think as artists it's important to again network,
build a brand for yourself.
Build a brand, build your own sort of community of people that you know and like working with, right? Yeah.
Actually, they have a One Good ring as well, as shown on the screen. It's basically like a smart ring, same function. You put it over your phone, you can get your particulars across. And if you are looking to invest in such a tool for your networking purposes, you can actually use my name, Bian Tong, for 10% off. It's a promo code. So once again, thank you to the people at One Good team and One Good Card for sponsoring this video. And hopefully NAFA becomes one of their clients lah. That would be nice. Then all the students get one. I don't know. But speaking of networking and branding yourself, right? Do you do it just for NAFA or do you do it for like your own endeavors? And if so, what are some other projects that you embark on, like side hustles? Any?
I think currently what I oversee at NAFA is mainly programming and production. So as part of our syllabus at the School of Music, the students will be putting up weekly performances during term time, during semester. And my job is basically to curate some of these performances, send out the publicity, make sure that the students get a healthy, realistic audience to perform to, and in doing so, they gain performance confidence and exposure to and engagement with the wider community. So that's what I do on the day-to-day sort of job. And again, because I do not rely on my external sort of engagements as a primary form of my income, I do not feel as compelled to put in as much effort to promote whatever I do on the side. But having said that, I think it's important to take stock. I think having been 10 years working at NAFA, it's important to take stock of what I have done. And I think over the next couple of months, if time allows, I will be putting together perhaps a website or a more streamlined sort of platform for me to not really to say shout out to the world to say, hey, I am available for this or that, but to really just take stock of what I'm doing. I think it's important for artists, people in general, to do that at various points of their lives, to really remind themselves that they have done quite a bit of good work, hopefully, and then to really examine at that point in their lives what they will be doing next, or what would they focus on more, or what would they then maybe try to trim the fat in some other areas so that they can provide more focus and direction in whatever they want to do.
Yeah. So what do you do on the side? Like, is it composing?
I don't do as much composing now. I recognize that it may be a craft that, although it's something that appealed to me at the start of my musical career journey, it may not be as important to me at this stage of my life. So instead of my own sort of ideas and my own sort of musical works, what I prefer now is actually to elevate or to help others elevate what they are doing. Not just through NAFA, but also through some of the things that I do on the side. So, for example, if I get a call to perform with Seti Kapela, for example, or if I get a call to perform for some other functions elsewhere, I'm happy to facilitate that. Sometimes not just as a performer, but sometimes to really just curate the program to understand what the sort of client or the group needs, and how we can then come together to create an experience that is memorable for both the client as well as the musicians.
So like a consultant.
I think the nature of the work is consultancy. You can call it curation, advice. I think some people don't like the word curation. I can understand.
Oh, why?
Not sure. Maybe they feel it's a bit too sort of
spoon feeding,
or maybe too atas or too stiff upper lip kind of situation. But it's all about making things work for different stakeholders. So if the client comes to us and wants a certain kind of mood or atmosphere, then obviously we will try to deliver something that is to the brief, rather than something that we want to do as artists.
Oh, we as in like yourself?
So we can take many sort of different forms. I think primarily the nature of my work, being at NAFA, is still mainly focused on what I do as an administrator. So we sometimes get requests to perform at corporate community functions, and if depending on the time frame and the kind of resources that are available, some of these we allow students to sort of have a platform to perform, but more often than not, we also tap into our alumni network, because these are ultimately
active industry professionals.
Exactly, and these are acquaintances, friends within the NAFA sort of network, and because the community is so small and close knit, which is not a bad thing, then it's easy to
win-win
identify.
Situation.
Yeah, it's easy to identify a win-win situation, mutually beneficial sort of arrangement, where we can showcase some of our talents who have passed through our doors.
So you have shared extensively about your time at NAFA, how you've been pushing the arts there, and having known you for so long, honestly, I've never heard you say like the slightest bad thing about like NAFA. I mean, you've been working there for so long, so obviously you have been someone that has contributed a big part of your life to the arts locally. With the new formation of UAS and with currently where you are at now in life, what are your hopes for the arts industry in the future? I'll just keep it very broad so you can.
I think it pays to be respectful and nice, and to really recognize the work that people do. Because at the end of the day, I think you can be known for your artistic excellence, and you can be known for the achievements that you have done. But what people don't often talk about is, what about the person behind the output? I think it's important to really think of our understanding of arts, and how that relates to broader themes, like without sounding too grand or idealistic, human nature, needs, sustainability, and these are connections that people will have to sort of figure out for themselves. What does it mean for us to be an artist in this time and age? Much as I think how doctors, engineers, accountants will have to embody some sort of purpose or meaning into the job that they do. I mean, of course they can. I mean, everyone, not including those professions, anyone can just do it for the money, for the fame, for the achievements. But how can we then, at the end of the day, improve the lives of people around us? And of course, the starting point of that for me is to be respectful, to be nice, to be acknowledging of the efforts and the talents of the people around us. And I think that would make the sort of immediate working environment a better place for everybody to contribute to in the arts and beyond.
Recently, I've been involved in the Chingay 2024, which is by the time this video is out, I'm not sure if it happened already, but around this year Chingay 2024. And I must say it's quite lit. Like the music is very good. It's written by very talented young musicians. Like the music director Robbie is only 23 when he wrote it, currently 24. And another guest on this show, Tangy Boy, is a local rapper. He also surprised me in like the amount of like how well he writes music, even though he's like a rapper.
Right.
So I came to realize that Singaporeans are actually very good, like musicians are very sought after. But why is it that, like, why do you think is that the arts scene in Singapore is still seen as like subpar to places like New York or like other global cities?
I think it's a relatively young nation, relatively, because in comparison to some of these other cities or regions that you've mentioned earlier, I think we don't give ourselves enough credit, and we don't give ourselves enough support for each other. And I don't have a direct answer to that, and I only say that it takes time to build up a certain community or to foster a certain sense of identity amongst ourselves. But I think it's always a chicken and egg situation. Do you wait for your fellow artists to make it big in the international scene before you support them, or do you just throw your weight behind them in the first place and hope that they will get somewhere? And of course the question is quite rhetorical, but we always try to push for things, and it's always a sort of 后浪推前浪 sort of situation, right? Where the older generations will lead the way and nurture the next batch of artists who will then go on to make do the same, pay forward, pave the path for future generations of artists. And I think that after SG50, I think it's we start to see more emphasis on supporting local, not just in the arts, of course. We're talking about, say, products or say vegetables, eggs, eggs, 30% of Singapore's vegetables, I think, by 2030 or something like that, right? So this sort of awareness of who we are in the world, where do we come from, where we are going towards, this whole idea of awareness of what's happening around, and I think that applies to the arts as well. There will be increasing opportunities for future generations of artists to make their mark, and in some ways it's thanks to the generation above us, before us, that have done that and have paved the way for younger artists to really be out there and fly the Singapore flag. But it does take the support of the community, both arts practitioners and non-arts practitioners, to really elevate the status of the arts in Singapore. Starving artists.
Hungry seal.
Right. But that's a struggle with sustenance, right? And starving, right? And one might argue to say that it's necessary to create or to live such a condition, because then you would understand what it means to yourself as an artist. If you are always in a sort of privileged area and with little recognition of that, and with little concern or with little empathy for the people around you and the wider community, then it's hard to make art that is relevant, that relates to people. It's difficult to build an audience because you may not be as understanding as to what issues they relate to, and therefore speak to them in a more relatable manner, right?
Okay, speaking of starving artists, consistent with the previous episodes, Lu Heng has recommended a food item, but not only did he recommend something, he also brought it to the show. So, can you please share more about what is it that you brought?
So these are cream puffs that are fried. The only reason why I came across this was because a week ago I was down with COVID.
Oh.
And because of that, I couldn't eat a lot of things I wanted to eat. And while going out to buy food one day, I passed by this shop called Kazo. And I got reminded of, there's this very fancy sort of fried cream puff, which I'd like everyone to share. So I brought it along. So
there you have it. This is Lu Heng's food recommendation. So before we dig in, thank you for coming on to this show.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure knowing you all these years, and thanks for sharing all the wisdom that you have gathered over the years, I would say. Like hearing you share a lot about these things from administrator and educator perspective is very enriching, because so far we've only had practitioners, but now we are getting like a, not say top down, but like a third person view on the arts industry, which I think is very beneficial. Yeah. So any words of encouragement or closing words you would like to share with our audience?
Well, not so much closing or encouraging words, I think. Well, for all of you who are watching the show, all the best in whatever you do, whether you choose arts as a career or not, whether you support the arts or not. I hope this has been helpful in some way or another. And be nice. Stay hungry, stay foolish, and always practice gratitude. Thank you.
And always practice.
Yeah, and always practice, yes.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Alright, thanks for watching this episode of Starving Artists of Singapore. If you like this video, please hit the like button below and comment down who you want to see us feature next. And if you have any questions for Lu Heng or anything he said that you agree or disagree with, let us know in the comment section below. And last but not least, if you want to support the channel and support local artists, you can do that by pressing the subscribe button so we can continue delivering this kind of content to you. So thanks for watching and see you.
Thank you. See you.
Bye bye.